Hello everyone! Welcome back to the RationalInvestor.com's Daily Brief Recap. Our fastest 10 to 15 minutes. Hopefully we're in that window here for your day. I want to just make sure YouTube is working here before we get going. 10 to 15 minutes. And it looks like we are. Yay! Alright, so action-packed episode here for you. Got a lot to talk about. Sure hope I can get this done in 10 to 15 minutes. Let's see how we do. As always, I like to start off with just, put together a little chart deck of what I'm going to talk about here today. And as you can see, lots going on the screen here. So first and foremost, we had a big fundamental event happen in the marketplace yesterday. The FOMC had officially announced they were lowering their interest rates down to 2%, which is interesting because we sort of talked about this on the site. If we pop on over to Mr. Murphy's yield curve analysis, are we inverted? Are we not? It's interesting how Mr. Murphy's curve never did go inverted here, still showing normal. So now with short-term interest rates back around 2%, the curve is a lot happier. So it feels as though we're maybe dodging recessionary talk here for the short term. The Fed has been sort of been put back in the bottle. Now, what I understand is that the Fed has, said we will cut short-term interest rates, but we were talking about it in the daily brief here today. We do have a bunch of Fed speakers coming out over the next couple of days. We've got... I suppose we don't have to go into names, but we got a couple Fed speakers, I think, that are out tomorrow. The tone that I heard is that they're feeling much more hawkish. They're not really enthusiastic about cutting rates anymore, but they have gone and cut rates, and so as a result, I think the market in general is asking whether maybe the Fed sees, growth very suspect here right now. But let's keep an eye on sort of their talk tomorrow. And I did notice that stocks had sort of jumped up on the open following late yesterday's violent reversal. They've backed off a little bit here, but it's interesting. We did a really good analysis of option open interest. And I think you can make the argument that the big boys we have a quadruple witching coming up tomorrow. It seems to me that they'll do very well if they can park the S&Ps up around 301, 300 area. There's a lot of call open interest above the 300 level, so I don't think they really want it any higher than that. And put-wise, the heaviest open interest in the puts is actually quite a bit lower. There is one outlier we talked about, but we don't really need to go into that too much detail here today. I think on balance, if they take usually Thursdays is when the big business is done, and then the actual quadruple witching Friday is usually a relatively quiet event in the market. So my hunch is they're probably parking her right in this 301, 300 area for tomorrow. The reason why I mentioned, Fed right off the bat, of course, is we have to watch the U.S. dollar index itself. Do we end up fractaling out up top here? If we lose this 97.86 level, then that means that the U.S. dollar is probably going to see some downside pressure here in the short term. Right now, an inside bar, jury's still out. Probably have to wait till Monday, Tuesday to see how that plays out for next week. What I did find interesting, and I even tweeted this out, really, really good anecdote. We have a general rule on the site. Do not trust the first hour following a Fed announcement event. And sure enough, as the arrow points out, this is the S&P 500. You can see the market was working lower. I was wondering whether this was going to be a sell the rumor, buy the news kind of event. The event happened, the market dumped right on a sort of knee-jerk reaction, and then violently shifted right back up and actually closed the day slightly positive on the day yesterday, if I'm not mistaken. So really, really good anecdote. And, if you don't know this, journal this, take a screenshot of this. This is why you're watching these videos, right? It's trying to learn something. Very simply put, do not trust the first hour following a Fed announcement. And yesterday was a beautiful example of that. Still leery about whether I'm too bullish of the gold and silver per se. Gold really hasn't done a heck of a lot here. I'm still waiting for counter trend rallies up top to give me potential short trades. But as I have on the screen here today, I'm absolutely in love with palladium right now. And palladium's trying to push to a new, if we change this to a weekly chart, you'll see that, and I like to judge trends based off the weekly charts. You can see palladium is just sitting right up at the top end of the range. And it looks like this could be like a bull flag, suggesting that we could go substantially higher. The way that I'm playing it, of course, is through this little stock, North American Palladium. And he's having just an absolutely fantastic day here. Breaking out again, 50% level targets, bought targets up in sort of that 18 area. Do like gaps filled up top here, clean it up. Once that event hits, though, I'm probably going to be thinking about finally taking some profits on this long trade. But love the palladium right now. So just wanted to mention that. Tote my own horn. Brian, way to go. Now, interesting on sort of a side, we'll slide over into crypto right now. We've been watching, one stock I would really like to be an investor in is this HUT 8. But as you can see, we're nowhere near the bottom. I was wondering on HUT whether we might be carving out like a bullish bot, sort of trend following extension move. Something along those lines. And then up top. Now, I do believe that if crypto and Bitcoin had broken out and accepted above trend lines, this thing would have fired. But as you can see, we've come right back down against the bottom end of its range. This will be a really interesting level for me to watch, see if it can hold it. If it can't, then we're going to have to stay, hit the reset button and start our count all over again. Trend line analysis kind of idea. Maybe if we can hold these lows and start bottoming again, I'll be watching this 255 area. There's nothing really for me to do here right now. And then sort of juxtaposed with that, another blockchain related stock that I'm interested in, I've actually taken a trade off of it, is this Riot. And interesting on the Bitcoin dump overnight, and we were kind of worried about this yesterday. That was awfully close to a key reversal yesterday. It was an engulfing bar, so no doubt about it. Definitely closed the day heavy. You could almost feel following the Fed announcement that some sort of dump in Bitcoin was coming. I put tweets out to that effect. We'll talk about that in a minute. But very simply put, I bought this W. I'm willing to risk to the break of the bottom of the W. So, yes, we've broken down, but not enough so to get me to actually balk. So just sort of sitting in the trade, and ironically enough, I'm long from this 204 sitting at 199. Not really anything for me to do right at the moment. It is interesting to see that we have, all those people that like to follow trend lines. Thought we had a really interesting battle yesterday where you can see these trend lines off the top. They were broken. But if we actually zoom into just even recent price action, you'll notice, we were trying to break out through the top, and then we sort of floundering here. It's sort of stuck. She's not really ready to go just yet. We'll see how it goes. Only time will tell. Then if we do like trend lines off of the bottom, you can see we actually just came right back to a trend line support here this morning. Now, as Bitcoin has been bouncing back here and things like Ethereum and stuff have been moving to new highs, you can see how this thing's sort of cleaned itself up a little bit. Little too early for me to abandon my long position. I just simply have to say this trade's working, and it's just working, and that's just the way it goes. Now, heading over to crypto specifically, we had a pretty big event yesterday come in. Obviously, Fed announcement. You can clearly see off of this Coinbase chart. We dumped hard overnight, and then we just stopped on a dime as we sort of came into these original inside bar levels. You guys have heard me talk lots about inside bars. I think you could make the argument this was pretty close. If we go A, B, C, D, didn't quite hit the bot objectives, which would be basically an exploration into the tails, but we came awfully close. We had some short setups that we've been talking about recently. They moved to the point of stops being moved to trailing levels. And then, after the dump, and I often find that, make reference to this because I think it's pretty important. The Bitcoin price really does us to consolidate into Fed events. I've seen this happen about 4 or 5 times. I put out a tweet about it yesterday. Of course, nobody in crypto likes Brian talking like that kind of stuff. But I noticed that basically following the U.S. market, basically closing right here, Bitcoin was now given the official permission that once the fundamental event has been done, now make your move. And sure enough, quick dump, boom, washed out these shorts, or these longs, right? Their stops on there, and then that was it, right? It was just a sort of one move event, boom, and then everything stopped. And I do find this happens quite a bit on Bitcoin recently. If anything, I think it's also a commentary on sort of ranging market states, that we get these big dumps and then consolidation. Dump, consolidation. Dump, consolidation. Dump, consolidation. So it really doesn't surprise me that we dumped and then consolidation. And for those people that, did take this bot, you move your stop to trailing. I would just simply move my stop above this reactionary high, and you can see that got politely told to exit on that event right there. The interesting thing about this, though, is that we have done some technical damage off of this sort of like 4-hour charts. As you can hear from the blings, I'm talking way too much. Spreads are starting to look a little toppy as well. If anything, like I've been talking with the community through the daily brief, coming up to some really interesting pivots off of things like RSIs. Does MACD M out here? Does the OBV M out here? So we are doing some technical damage. The failure of Bitcoin to actually break out through the range that I tweeted this out. Brian's just full of tweets these days. Where the hell is it? It's one of these charts. Not that one, not that one. Oh well, I guess I misplaced it. Damn, now of course I can't find it. It might have been off of this one. I had done some trend line analysis off of this chart. And actually I drew an uptrend line off of this June consolidation bottom, just simply using the market structure. And I noticed that price respected that trend line here. As we had sort of said before, really good anecdote why we have to wait for market structure on the other side of trend lines to validate the bull. I had been thinking, had we actually bottomed here and took off, that would have been sort of, well, here we go again. Now, where the hell's the damn chart? That would have been this scenario. A, B, C, D. Was watching this really closely through Fed yesterday. We failed there. Probably this uptrend line now acts as resistance on the upside here. Basically back against all that original market structure. My hunch is that's probably going to be a major battle point here if Bitcoin can get up. But if anything, I really like this sort of range thesis right now. Bitcoin right now, I like the idea that we have confirmed this higher time frame market structure. The very fast little bot shorts were working. I think they've been politely told to just hop off. And now what we're really having, I think, is this major sort of longer term trend line battle going on right now. Do we lose this key support line? And as you can see, the market this morning came right down into that level. That was overnight. It confirmed new 4-hour structure. I still think these bear AB equals CDs are working. But the battle royale, I think, is in essence who's going to win this battle. And of course, what we really want to see is structure on the other side of this trend line if you're a bear, or structure on the other side of this trend line if you're a bull. But for the time being, I think we're still stuck in this trading range. Just drive you crazy. It's coiling, 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 getting tighter and tighter and tighter. Hopping over to the altcoins now, and I've talked way too much here today, but what the hell, I'm having fun. We been talking lots recently about bullish setups off of things like Ethereum. Really don't see a heck of a lot to do here off of the higher time frames. I was really worried that, yesterday's video I had sort of talked a little bit about how this was starting to look a bit dangerous up top here. We were doing our video yesterday and I was like, be careful. Sure enough, there was a dump, but it didn't really last very long. So if anything, this is a really good analogy. Probably a little too early to call tops on these markets, especially in the face of higher time frame bullish setups working. Let's see if I can find those charts, right? These were working away. And through the daily brief, we sort of reviewed the concept. First off, my overbought, oversold indicator, Willie, is not stupid yet. So technically, we don't have an overbought market just yet. We're getting an even bigger bullish divergence that's confirming here. So, and then, big green chunky bars, we're starting to actually see buyers buy. What I like to do is, our level 1 instructor, actually, he was the first one who actually did this, and I thought this was so cool. But in essence, he just simply said, you know what, I'm going to apply the bot trade metrics to things like L-tangonators. So in this case, we don't ever really want to have a winning trade turn into a losing trade. So at 50% of the anticipated move, you move your stop to scratch. At 66, you'll start trailing stops. So at this point here, we've had 50%. We haven't had 66%. So I think your stop at the moment on this trade is sitting at scratch. And you just got to let it work. And it's just interesting to see as we were doing the daily brief, sure enough, Ethereum popped up and made a new high. So it's still a little bit early to call like bear here. I just think that it's extremely dangerous for new people to trading to come in and buy like really uppy markets. And yesterday's pullback was a really good example of how sometimes you can get caught. And if you did that on margin buying up there, you might have even gotten liquidated. Finish off today's conversation, a couple of the other little alts that we've been talking about here recently. ZRX is one that the Duke here, he grabbed this, and way to go, Duke. But such a good example. Hunt those W's, off of the weekly chart. We talked about it. Nice inside bar reversal there. Off of the dailies, you're hunting your W's, you're getting long. And of course, she just made a new high. Way to go. And the irony of it all is if you look at something like this, believe it or not, 50% retracement all the way up to 27 cents, to me, that's actually totally realistic. It's not unrealistic. So congratulations, Duke. Nice trade. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was, yesterday we had sort of said, don't get into the habit of chasing. So, if you see your coin is jumped up here, just, identify market structure where you really want to be long, identify reload zones, and hopefully you can see our good old buddy Mountain Man sitting right there at his 61.8. You could have worked your stink bid, and on this particular case, this is NEO, doink, hits 61.8 and ratchets back up. And that's the kind of trading that I'd love to see out of the public, right? Is don't chase, work your bids, be patient, and get fills on pullbacks. Okay, I think we'll leave it at that for today. Probably way too long, but hopefully everybody got some good value out of the offering today, as we had a lot of stuff to talk about here. All right. Have yourselves a great day, everybody. All the best, and bye.